Morning. I would like to share something with you today that I think is very relevant for the times that we are in right now. I know because of this virus, people everywhere are living in fear, distress, and people are not sure what's going to happen. There is hopelessness. But I want to show you something that I chanced upon in the Word of God once again. Several years ago, when there was a distressful situation in our country, I remember I went through this passage and the Lord showed me something. But today I remember this again, and I started reading that passage again. And this is in Isaiah chapter 6. In this chapter, we read that in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. The year King Uzziah died, this King Uzziah was the 10th king of Judah, and he was a very good man. He was a righteous king. He reigned for 52 years. He sought the Lord with his whole heart, and till the end of his reign, he was a very good king, leading the people of Judah in the things of God. But then towards the end of his reign, he became prideful, and then he had to reap the consequence of that pride, and he became a leper. And then he was separated. He had to live in a separate house. He couldn't go to the house of the Lord anymore. He couldn't be in the palace anymore. And then finally, one day he died. And before his death, of course, his son Jotham began to reign. But when the king, who was so righteous and who did so many great things for the kingdom, died, the prophet Isaiah was very much concerned about what would happen now, and looking at the prospects of the country or the kingdom, and not knowing what God has planned for the future of Judah, and what is going to be the future of Judah in this uncertain time. It was a perplexing time for Isaiah the prophet. He wanted to know what God has in store for his nation. And it looks like he wasn't very sure about Jotham, how he would act after the death of his father. And at that particular time, Isaiah the prophet had a vision of God. And in that vision, he says God was sitting upon a throne. God was not perplexed. God was not shaken. God knew, the God of heavens and earth, the creator. He knew that Uzziah, the king, would die one day. He knew he would become a leper one day because of his own actions. He knew that his son Jotham would reign in his place after that. He knew all these things much ahead of it. Even though what was present time for the prophet Isaiah was already known to God much ahead of that time. I don't know how earlier, because with God there is no time. So he knew it always that this would happen. He was not shaken. He was not caught off guard. He was not perplexed, but he was not only sitting on the throne, but it says his throne was elevated. It was lifted. It was high and lifted up. The prophet saw God's throne elevated, lifted up so high above everything, indicating God was not shaken. Number one. Number two, God was in control. He was above the whole situation. He was above the whole thing, beyond what we can imagine or conceive in our mind. He was in control, and he was above everything, and he was seeing everything in one glance. And I believe this was a very comforting, very assuring vision for the prophet, that God is in control. In this time of distress, when we are hit, not only in our country but worldwide, we are hit by this virus, and we are getting the news that more and more people are testing positive. In this time when most of the countries in the world have declared a shutdown, when people cannot go out of their houses and go to work or business, especially people who are in business, people who have to earn their wages daily, they are broke. They don't have any income right now. Businessmen, they cannot run their business, and not all of them, but most of them cannot run their businesses, and they have to pay salaries to their employees. This is a very stressful time, but the assurance we have is God is in control. He is still on his throne. He has not left his throne. He has not forsaken the throne. He hasn't run away from the throne. He is still on the throne. He is in control, and he knows what he's going to do next. He has a plan. He already has a plan. So let us have this assurance that God is on his throne. He is not shaken by what is happening right now. Let's trust him. Let us rejoice in this truth that he is on his throne, and not only that he's on his throne, but his throne is lifted up high above everything. I think for Isaiah to say this very specifically, that the throne was lifted high, it indicates that he not only just saw the throne in heaven, but he saw the throne above everything, indicating that God was telling him, hey, I'm not only on my throne, but my throne is above everything. Let us have that assurance. Let us have that peace. Let us have that comfort that our God has some plans and he's going to perform it. So let's just wait. And while God is going to bring his plans upon this earth in his timing, let us spend the time from now till that happens in rejoicing, in worshiping, and in speaking and declaring that his will is going to be done upon this earth. Amen.